Hello viewers and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. I'm Hamza Idris. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo has called on the incoming administration to explore all avenues to end the ethnic division that emerged from the 2023 general elections. He also emphasized the need for national moral rearmament and reconciliation, which have the potential to bring about healing and assuage Nigerian youths who he said were angered by the shortcomings of the elections. The former president also stressed the importance of thinking outside the box to rescue Nigeria from its plunging economy and huge national debt burden, adding that there must be political will and action as well as administrative efforts to reform the public service and turn it into a capability-ready unit. Obasanjo, who made the call at a conference organized by NEGSER and the Ibadan School of Governance and Public Policy in Abuja, also stated that he is now too old to keep quiet and will continue to voice his concerns for the benefit of the nation. And away from that, Peter Obi, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, has said that he is facing pressure to leave the country. Obi accused the ruling All Progressives Congress and some government agencies of attempting to divert attention from the infractions that marked the recently concluded polls by making unfounded allegations against him. He was responding to a viral audio recording that allegedly had him speaking to Bishop David Oyedepo of Winners Chapel. Obi described the recording as fake and said that he never stated or implied that the 2023 election is a religious war. And finally, ahead of supplementary elections, the People's Democratic Party has demanded that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, removes the resident electoral officer in Adamawa State, Hudu Yunusa. The governorship election held in the state on March 18 was declared inconclusive by INEC, with the PDP leading with about 31,000 votes. Following the announcement of April 15 for the supplementary election in the state and others, the PDP National Publicity Secretary Debo Ogunakpa, in a statement on Tuesday, accused the REC of complicity in alleged plots to manipulate the outcome of the governorship election in Adamawa State. Supplementary governorship election is expected to be held in Adamawa and Kebbi states. For the legislative, there will be elections in 5 senatorial districts, 31 federal and 58 state assembly constituencies. On the program tonight, we'll be continuing the conversation on the 2023 elections and how we can improve on it. However, emphasis will be laid on the forthcoming supplementary elections, what to expect and lessons to learn. I'm joined on this program once again by Mr. Paul James. He is the Program Manager, Elections at Yaga Africa. We also have Emmanuel Njoku, who joins us virtually. He is the Director, Democracy and Governance Program at Connected Development Code. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you and good evening.
Yes, I should start with Ima, or I should start with you to open the floor.
Okay. Either of us can go.
All right, let me start with you, and let's start with Obasanjo.
Yeah.
He said there is the need for moral rearmament and to heal the wounds of the election. Are you on the same page with him?
I think I do. I quite agree with him. A lot has happened during the electioneering campaign, and I thought this is really time for the healings to begin to happen. This is the time where we want to see that cohesion as a nation. A lot has happened that has more than divided us, and sadly, the political class tried to capitalize or feed on those negative indices that had continued to divide us as a nation. Campaigns were done along religious lines, along ethnic lines. We saw a lot of also regional politics that happened. And if you remember also, Obasanjo was one of those leaders that we had in this country that I think you can put him in the class of a nationalist because...
Okay, nationalist.
Yes.
But some say he's partisan.
Well,
or nationalism and partisanship can go together.
I am trying to divorce that from this current conversation, looking at the concerns as they were, and also why we need to have that healing has to happen if we really truly want to continue as a nation. I'm making the point that because we have seen attempts by him, both within the country and even outside the shores of the country, to do efforts around enforcing or promoting national unity, especially within the African sub-region, and also within the Nigerian state. So I wasn't surprised that that is coming from him. And then again, I think he addressed it very well, especially to the older generation, because for some of the younger generation, they may not be able to truly understand some of these trappings that are happening now. For them, it's all part of the politics, which I thought would have been a very bad lesson for them if we want to start, especially the first-time voters that joined the political fray this time. It is not the nature or culture of politics anywhere in the world. The Nigerian system was just a bit different, and I thought it is important that we begin to recalibrate, we begin to do things the way that they should happen. And I'm happy that this is addressed as a public event, that I guess will also have some of this political class in attendance. And I also wish that this can also, we will have a chance that this can be communicated to all their supporters, all of their adherents. It is very important because for me, I think we have gained so much as a nation that we begin to think about things that will divide us. If we think about even the sustenance of the democracy that we had, this is like 23 or 24 years since the return to democracy, and this is not the time to begin to think about the wounds of the past, but then how do we also heal from those that inflicted us just in the last election, and how do we also move forward from here? But again, it's not just about moving forward. I think it is important that in retrospection, before we move forward, we look at what were those concerns, because they have to be addressed. Otherwise, they will keep staring us in the face as we also speak about the future. I mean, as we speak about the future of the country. So it is important that as he calls about this healing, the healing has to take different shape. I recall during his own time, he tried to set up this Oputa panel. If you recall, there was this panel that even had him appear before the panel to speak to some of those things that people thought he had done in the past. Maybe
something like that.
Something of that shape, or just a way that we can bring the country back together, bring the regions back together, and begin to see how we can throw away those things that divided us in the election, and how we can begin to rebuild. Like I had always maintained, it is easy to destroy, but building will take a long time. So again, as we go through this process, I think what is very important is also to be patient, and also that the younger generation will begin to tell them some truths about Nigeria, because oftentimes we just want to
dismiss or hide under certain things to ignore serious matters.
That's why I say if we want to truly move forward, let us open up the wound first and understand what were the issues, and begin to build those blocks gradually, and hopefully Nigeria will heal from there.
All right, Emmanuel, what is your take on this? Remember that Obasanjo was actually partisan during the last election. He supported Peter Obi openly. Assuming it was Peter Obi that win the election, will he still make call for healing of wounds and all that?
Well, Obasanjo, being a former president of this country, is a politician. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with him being partisan. In fact, I mean, I think it speaks volumes of the kind of character he is for him to choose a side. And he's a Nigerian. I mean, he has kids, he has family here. So the issues and the concerns of Nigeria equally affects him. So I don't see anything wrong with Obasanjo being partisan to say this is who he's supporting. But him coming out, like Paul said, about Obasanjo being a nationalist, I want to agree with him. I mean, with the spree of letters that he has been writing lately, even the one he wrote to the UK government on how they should tamper justice, how they should tamper justice with mercy on Ike Ekweremadu's issue. Now, talking about healing, before we talk about healing, I think we should also look from the point of justice. We should also look from the point of, like Paul said, what went wrong, the actors that didn't act the way they were supposed to act, what has happened. Starting first of all from INEC, starting first of all from the INEC chairman. the silence of the INEC chairman till date is very loud. It is very disturbing. You know, like Paul also mentioned, a lot of first-time voters, you know, came in to approach this election with so much trust. All of that trust was betrayed at the point when INEC failed to transmit results electronically as stipulated by the INEC guideline. Now, one would expect that at the INEC internal work, that heads will roll. But as we speak, even the INEC chairman has not yet come out to tell Nigerians what went wrong. You know, one approach, one thing I saw that the way INEC approaches the election, INEC approached the election as if it is their thing, as if it's INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission's thing, more like an internal thing. It's not so. Election is about every citizen, every adult citizen of this nation. And as such, the processes and the issues around this election should be open to every person to understand and to follow. So if something has gone wrong, one would expect, first of all, that INEC is supposed to probably make an apology. If not an apology, make a clear explanation of what went wrong. I mean, the money that we used for this deployment is not the INEC chairman's money. It is the Commonwealth of Nigerians. It is taxpayers' money. So I think he owes Nigerians an explanation, and not to hope or expect that time will, you know, with time, everybody will forget. I mean, this generation of young voters, they won't forget. They don't forget. EndSARS has happened 2 years going to 3 years now. Nobody has forgotten. So if we think that this is one of those activities that over time people will forget, that won't happen. Then on the part of the Nigerian security agencies, they are understood. And I've read that they've made arrests of 820 people who were electoral offenders. You know, we need to see these people being tried. We need to see these people jailed, you know, for the crimes they committed. I mean, it is at this point that you can now start saying that healing should happen, and people will naturally, typically feel that justice has been served and healing will start happening. And then the court, the Nigerian judiciary, is also on trial. We would expect that there will be a transparent process in the so when we talk about healing, it's very disturbing. You're telling people to heal. We've seen cases like in Rivers State, in Imo State, where people who lost the election, who have a time frame of 21 days for them to approach INEC and get certificate copies of what they need to go to the court within this timeline. And people are now allowed to do this basic thing. And you're talking about healing? I saw one of the guys that ran for office in Rivers State governorship position in Rivers State this morning. He's been talking about the challenges. We all saw what happened in Rivers State 2 days ago, 3 days ago, when the PDP and APC clashed. I mean, is this supposed to be an issue? Election has happened, and typically by law, every person who contested for election has a right to demand and request for materials and all that was in election, so they can build their case and go to court and hope to get justice. If this is not happening, and we're talking about healing, it doesn't work that way. I mean, you don't hurt your wife and expect healing to happen when you don't show any apology, when you don't come upright about the issues, and you expect that time will just get people to heal. Yes, people are hurting. If you go to the social media, you will agree with me, Paul, that the social media has been very tensed, so tensed in the past 1-2 weeks. I mean, me particularly, I even avoid the social media right now. It gets so tense. Wow. The simple reason is because people are not seeing the process. People didn't see the process to be transparent, and all the actors involved are acting like everybody should just move on. Why should people move on? This is a serious issue. This is the foundation of the democracy. The election is the hope of many Nigerians, the hope of a better tomorrow for many Nigerians. So for them to move on and for healing to happen, it shouldn't just be something that former President Obasanjo will preach. The actors involved must be seen to be doing the needful. That way, from there, we can now expect that healing will be organic and people will start getting better.
All right. Thank you. Yes. About INEC, you know, yesterday, as if you were together, you know, even though we expected him, but speaking on the same page. But I don't know. I don't want to disagree with you or agree with you. Some people are saying we're only looking at the negative. I asked this question, but I'm repeating it. Looking at the electoral map. You understand how certain things happen in some places. Don't you think beyond criticizing INEC, we should try and also encourage it, because that is the topic of our discussion today, ahead of the upcoming supplementary elections. That, okay, yes, they have done well because some powerful forces could not penetrate, you know, and do whatever they like in certain places. Of course, they had their way in some places.
Well, for INEC, if INEC has truly done well as Nigerians will expect, you would not have been seeing all of this tension that is now building up in the space. The concern around supplementary election, as we are and as we're talking about, is also a product of what INEC had done. And to me, it is also because of the inconsistencies you see in INEC, especially in the application of its own rule, and that is why you are seeing this sort of negative reactions. I had mentioned on this platform that on the part of the Commission, one thing that it didn't do well is about how it managed the communications around the election, especially crisis.
They were on the defensive.
Especially crisis communication. In fact, people have challenged that we should go back and look at the communication from INEC in a build-up to the election. There was no communication from the Commission that was directed at providing public information about how to engage a process. It was always INEC coming out to counter something, to defend something. Wow. INEC is always only being reactive and not proactive.
I would say they are proactive.
They are only being reactive. If you go back and see most
focus on defending on it.
Always defending some of its processes. Now, you are a body responsible for the election. Everybody appreciates and understands that. My expectation from the Commission going into the election, like I had also mentioned, is managing expectations. When we go into this, if there are challenges, you come out and tell Nigerians what are their challenges and how you intend to address the challenges. What the Commission tried to do this time was to just tick the box that for the first time in 4 trials, they have been able to conduct election on the day that is set out to conduct election. That means any consequences. If you recall, in 2019, election was suspended because of logistics. It was suspended by 1 week. In 2015, election was suspended by 6 weeks because of security. In 2011, election was suspended by 1 week because of logistics as well. Now, the Commission this time wanted to forge ahead. It managed the logistics to some extent by producing logistics in country. For that, I commend them. They produced the checklist, the ballot papers in country. It is in transporting this to the locations on election day that challenges happen. Some of this could not have been INEC problem because, like we know, there was this cash crunch that affected movement of materials and personnel on the day of the election. But come out and tell Nigerians, this is our constraint. Nigerians will not hang INEC. And if INEC wasn't fully ready to go out for the election on that day, of course, we can reschedule the election. And we'll say we must conduct all the elections.
So it's not sacrosanct that it must
And we'll say we must even conduct all the elections on the same day. I mean, if it is not possible, you have a window or a period that you wanted to conduct the election. If it were not possible to have conducted all the elections on the same day, you stagger it. But some can happen on Saturday, some can happen on Sunday within this time framework. Now, they went into this election. We saw the concerns about late commencement of polls. While they were able to meet up with that, we saw also the concern around technology. Do not forget that this election was predicated, was built around technology. All the conversation, all the public confidence that we tried to build was around election technology and how to improve the transparency of the election.
But that issue you raised, I want Njoku to come in, that it's not sacrosanct to conduct election one day. Njoku, if I'm not mistaken, you appear to be an advocate of a one-day election, you know, for across all platforms, you know, I mean, all the elective positions.
Yes, I've said this, and I think that's what we should do. Our elections are too costly, you know, partly because we do 2 elections that can happen the same day. You do an election, and after 3 weeks, you come back and repeat every single process of the same election. You hire ad hoc staff again for another day. You get security personnel for another day. You get NURTW. You know, I mean, all of these things happen. So you don't necessarily need these things. Election can happen once in a particular day. And what is worse about elections in Nigeria is after you do the presidential election, like we saw, then there's this bandwagon effect that people loyalty, first of all, okay, because there's a president-elect, you know, even the loyalty of the security agencies kind of tend to realign their loyalty. And, so all of this effect happens. And then you see people, you do election on the 25th of February, like we saw, all the people contesting for state assembly and governorship elections, all of them were all over the place trying to deliver for whoever that was contesting for president and people contesting for national assembly for their political parties. Elections should happen the same day, whereby every person running for office will be so busy trying to deliver his or herself on the same election day. We don't need to spend the kind of money we spend. Instead of spending that much money to do 2 elections, we should rather spend a little fraction of the money we would have used to do the second election on voter education and campaign and awareness, so that people will understand that there will be 2 extra ballots instead of the usual 3 ballots, which is the president, Senate, and House of Reps. We'll do more campaign and more awareness on citizens, understand there is going to be 5 ballots, which is the state assembly and the governorship election, on the same day. We observed the election in Kenya. We were privileged to be in Kenya to observe the election. I've said this before. The election happens only just in a day, and there are 5 ballots in their election. 5 ballots, the president, the Senate. They don't have the House of Reps. They have the governorship. They have the state assembly. And I think they have ballots for independent candidates. 5 ballots. So why do election? It's too costly. We don't have to do that. We can do election once and probably have security personnel. I've said this before. Armed security personnel in the polling unit, because we also saw this in Kenya. In every polling unit, there is a police personnel carrying AK-47 in that polling unit. So if you are thinking of coming to steal the ballot box, like President Buhari assured, an assurance that did it that well. We saw it happen in a few places, but it didn't really happen across the country. He assured that if you want to steal the ballot box, that will be the last noble act you will do in your life. We need to move from saying police shouldn't carry guns in our polling unit to having them carry AK-47s. At the February 25th election, Nigerians were jubilating, were happy when they saw the mobilizing of armed military men across the country. People were happy. People were happy because they felt that their security will be guaranteed when they go out to vote. They won't get stabbed or hacked by thugs. So these are some of the things we need to change. But I think that we don't need to be having 2 elections. It's too costly. We can cut this cost of election because it's just get 2 extra ballot boxes for House of Reps. For state assembly and for governorship, and get 2 extra ballot papers. Now, this is the extra cost you need to have an election. And after that, instead of spending all this time going roundabout, we should also focus more. Like I saw the SAN Abakoba say yesterday, we should focus more time to try to see that within the 2 months post-election, that every issue on the tribunal and Supreme Court judgments would have been made before people are being sworn into office. That way, we'll move on, beyond the elections.
But Njoku, still on this, yesterday I asked Paul here that, of course, not directly, but we had it from credible sources close to INEC, why they had issues on the day they conducted National Assembly and the presidential election together. Now, they've never tested the IREP for national election, that is presidential, but they tested it for off-season election, for the National Assembly or state legislature and all that. And that was why they were unable to upload the results, in real time and things like that. Don't you think that some of you know that I am encouraging them to go whole hook for everything? One day you will end up plunging them into a more problem than what they are contending with now.
So you see, that is why we talked about the INEC chairman and the incompetence that they exhibited in that election. Frankly, when we talk about test, we make it look like it's such a big deal. What INEC was supposed to do with IREV, to elementarify it and break it down to the easiest way any common person can understand it, is what we all do every day. Oh, so my wife has told me, for instance, now that she tends to go to market tomorrow morning. She tends to go to Gariki market to buy groceries. And I just say, oh, you created a list, snap the list and send to my WhatsApp. Let me see what the list or the cost is. So I'll support, I'll send money across. It is that simple. That was what INEC was supposed to do. So because they didn't do that, I mean, we shouldn't say it was a big deal testing it. No, there was nothing to be really tested. And most importantly, the data INEC was expecting is what we call static data. We already know that there are 176,000 polling units. We already know the number of elections that happened across the country. We already know the number of results from EC8As that were supposed to come from across the country. This is static data. I mean, I think what we even did at Usabe on the day of election observation probably may be more complicated than what INEC did with the IREV, because INEC's data was static data. But meanwhile, for us and our data, you can't tell how many videos that each observer is going to send to you in a day. If in that polling unit there are 10 or 15 incidences that he needs to video and record and send to you, he sends it in. So you can't say that it's only 2 videos or 2 messages you'll be getting. There's no limit to the message we're getting, and we're prepared. And we had all this information, and we use them in real time. So I think INEC has been doing elections for so long, and you look at what you said now, that you heard from the side some of the challenges that affected the smooth deployment of the February 25th election. So that's part of the issues that Paul was talking about. You heard, but have you had INEC say it? Has INEC come out to tell us that because of the cash crunch or scarcity of Naira, that was an issue? Have we had INEC say that because of the fuel? So, that is part of the concern that I have. I mean, the INEC chairman is a citizen of this country who has been given the mandate to carry out an election. If issues didn't go well, you expected to. So, you know what's funny? And why elections can be funny? In the state elections, like Osun election, and the Ekiti State election. Do you know that in between the elections, the INEC chairman calls for a meeting, a virtual meeting deploying Zoom to engage observers on ground? In the Osun election, I think, or Ekiti election, around 2:30 p.m. or 2:30 till 4, a meeting we were all sent links, and people from the field joined in the meeting to also engage INEC chairman and the board of INEC. So and this is the assurance that INEC built, in the lead up to the election. People have asked us, there are civil society, how is it that people didn't see this thing coming? How is it that everybody trusted INEC? Me particularly, I was an INEC evangelist, converting people and making people see reasons why they should go pick up their VCs, register, and also vote. But the assurance was because of how we saw INEC participate in off-cycle elections. But that has also taught us a lesson for us to understand that no matter how good INEC, performs in off-cycle elections, that we shouldn't, use that to judge them and form a perception or an expectation of what INEC will do in the elections.
All right.
So, okay.
Yeah, you had him.
Yeah,
go ahead.
That because you also didn't allow me to land on my last point. My suggestion about if we could do this in one day, because you started by asking about the electoral map.
Yes.
And if we are learning lessons, if you look at the 2015 election against the 2019 and the 2023 elections, what we saw, especially in terms of commencement, you got one part of the country having early commencement and another part of the country having late commencement.
Okay.
For instance, even in this election, you got places like the North Central, the Southwest, the Northwest having early commencement. You have Southeast and South-South having late commencement. If you do that against what has happened in 2019, it was almost similar thing. And that was why I was saying it is also possible, if these were the constraints, what are the lessons? I had also maintained that we don't have to always be thinking about moving forward without also looking back to see what are the issues.
Yeah.
If INEC doesn't have that wherewithal or that resources to be able to marshal a national election, they could decide to do all the northern states on Saturday, all the southern states on Sunday, for instance.
You mean for the presidency?
And see how they could manage that. They're all happening within the state.
Even for the presidency.
Yes, and I agree with the point that Emma had raised to the effect that we could actually do all of these elections on the same day. How will INEC do this? It's simply to even increase the time of voting. This is the only country where you see that I know of. I have observed election in more than 10, 20 countries as we speak. It's the only country where you go to the polls by 8 a.m. and then you close by 2.
Or 2,
by 2. What stops us from extending the time of voting, for instance, and give as many people that will come? But they said
if you are there, you are accredited.
Let us have an official communication, because I was also coming to that. The problem we have seen with our election is INEC inconsistency in application of its own rule.
You mentioned this earlier.
Yes,
Maybe
because
elaborate.
in this location, for instance, there was a time that I was challenged with, in fact, in 2019, there was problem with logistics, and it didn't start early, even on the day it has set out to do the election. I mean, the day it is scheduled to do the election. What INEC did then, the voter education, Festus Okoye, I still recall that. What he did was to send a communication across all their offices about the need to extend the time of voting. This time, even whilst observers saw that there was delay commencement, and observers in their midday statement all called for the need to extend time of voting, there was no communication from INEC to that effect. And that's why I'm saying, so people are left to use their own discretion, and that is the problem with INEC, and that I think we need to begin to talk about when we talk about reforming our electoral process. INEC uses so much discretionary powers. The commission shall, the commission did, the commission that. I guess it is independent, but we need to also begin to code some of these things into our law so that we make them laws. For instance, even in the resource management processes, some places where there were challenges, INEC explained to the people what the nature of challenge was and why they needed to postpone collation. It happened in Enugu. In other places, there was no communication. All INEC simply told people was, we are going for supplementary election. During the national election at the National Collation Center, the PDP party agent at the collation center raised concerns about some of the collation.
Do you know the lie, right?
Yeah, so what did the chair told him at that point? Go to the court. I mean,
it shouldn't have been so.
Exactly, because I thought there should also have been opportunity for fair hearing at that point, because even for the commission, the new electoral guideline has specified that commission can review election conducted election where there are concerns. Commission can review those elections within 7 days, within a window of 7 days. In Kaduna, Kudan local government, there was concern with the collation. At the collation center, they realized that the figure that they had online was different from the figure that they had on paper. They told the returning officer asked them to go back and reconcile the two before they will make the final collation. Now, if you go back to the concern about the inconclusive election or why we're going for supplementary, look at states like Adamawa, the difference of about...
what we're actually going to discuss when we return.
Difference about 30-something thousand. You are going for supplementary. Kaduna, difference of 10,000, no supplementary. Ogun State, difference of 19,000, no supplementary. So look at the same election, but different rules across different states.
All right. Paul, I will allow you to talk more on this and which forms the basis of our discussion for the next session of the program. Viewers, we will not stay long. Stay with us. We'll be back.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Now, as part of efforts to support Africa's goal of strengthening...
Now, looking at the activity chart, as you can see right here, a total volume of 130...
Created a Boko Haram crisis that at that time was restricted to Yobe.
How secure are they? You can see security men with blood.
This
is the road leading up to the
Or really,
Bridge.
if you look at England squad, you are looking at EPL, you are looking at their names. You are not looking at...
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. Do well to follow the conversation across our social platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and watch us live on YouTube. I still have Paul James in the studio and Emmanuel Njoku, who joins us virtually. Let's get to you, Emmanuel. Now we are facing supplementary elections in many states on, 15th. How ready do you think INEC is to face these elections, two for gubernatorial in Adamawa and in Kebbi? Let's start with that first.
Yeah, of course, INEC will be ready, and INEC should be ready. These are no big elections. When you say Adamawa and in Kebbi, it's not like elections have been cancelled in the whole state and they're going to have elections in all the polling units across Adamawa or Kebbi State. No, these elections are just going to happen in pockets of local government and in some polling units. So, I mean, why won't INEC be ready? And that's what we're talking about. Even if INEC goes to this election and they perform very optimally, election starts by 8:30, the Beavers works perfectly well, there is provision of security, there's provision of security, power outage where I am in my office. Yeah, there is provision of security, and this happens. It doesn't in any way. We must not use that as a measure to say INEC has done well. We saw this in Ekiti, and we saw it in Osun, and then we'll come to national election, and the whole thing gets bungled up. So I would think that INEC should be prepared. There's no reason. How many polling units are we talking about across the country? How many polling units are we going to be seeing? Of course, INEC will do well in this election. Of course, INEC will have early deployment. If INEC fails in having a good outing in this very few polling unit election, then that will be very disastrous for INEC. So I think INEC will be ready, and they should be ready.
All right. Paul, he said it's going to be very simple. But in Adamawa, for instance, PDP, just yesterday said the INEC, the REC, Nuhu should be redeployed. Nuhu, 2 days ago, said that his life is on that threat. So I'm going to have it easy. And this by-election, I think, is in Fufure local government, where you have the contention around some figures.
No, in Adamawa, the supplementary election will happen in all 21 local governments, in 47 wards, and in 69 polling units. It was supposed to be 77 polling units, but they had collapsed some polling units for Adamawa because some of them just have one voter, and they are not too far from each other. Okay. So in 69 locations. But then the politics of supplementary election for me is different from the normal election, and I could liken it to a fight to finish kind of scenario. Yeah. And so it's often not even about INEC, but about the political class. That's why you're seeing this kind of scheming happening. But even when it comes to the election, because, I mean, if people know that this is more like a matter of life and death, this is all I need. I don't
think if maybe Binani or the governor, any of them,
No, but the point I'm also trying to make is also, this is also where you might likely see the incumbent, while whatever power that they will have at their disposal. I was a witness to this in 2018 in Osun State, when INEC declared the election inconclusive and had to go for supplementary in 7 locations, 7 polling units. On the day of that election, of course, the party in government deployed all sort of machinery that you can imagine, to the effect that even for us as observers, we were not allowed access to some of those locations. Before you access the location, you have to tie a white handkerchief to indicate that you are with the party in government. I mean, so you are going to see all of those sort of scheming. 69 locations, for instance, in Adamawa State. Anybody will want to do whatever is within their power to see that they get votes from those locations. But that is even besides the point. I mean, of course, people will begin to cry foul because of some of these antics or some of the things they have seen by some of the actors in the electoral process from the last time. For Adamawa, I learned even the ICT director on the state has been redeployed to Abuja. He has been moved to Abuja.
But why is it that it is the PDP that is complaining? PDP is the ruling party in Adamawa.
PDP is the ruling party. They may have seen some things that we don't know.
He's enjoying incumbency power.
We are all in. They are enjoying incumbency, but they are also not they are not the administrators of the election, and they could conduct the election. They may have seen certain signs, perhaps, for them to begin to cry for. But also the point to make is, this already there is a difference of about 31,000 between the two candidates. Yes. The places where elections will be conducted, if you put the votes together for PVCs that are collected, it's about 37,000. And then I sincerely don't strongly feel like you have all the 37,000 voters to return back on Saturday to cast their ballots. So it's a give and take thing between the two parties. So that's why you begin to see all of this scheming happening. For the PDP, it is feeling edgy because you also have, whilst it could be the party in power in the state, you also have the national support for the other major lady that is, because for APC, it will be a thing of joy to say APC will give Nigeria the first female. Of course, so you could see that the election is high stake, and that is why you're hearing this sort of contestation in the state.
All right. Emmanuel, is it even worth it, the supplementary election in Adamawa, for instance? Looking at the margin between PDP and APC, was it actually induced supplementary, or you think it's worth it based on some of the figures quoted by Nuhu Direct there? Oh, we placed him. I think you shall answer this.
Yes.
Is it worth it? Because I have the figures here, Yeah.
No, I think it is for the interest of free and fair process. You also want to give every citizen the chance of participating in how or in electing who becomes their leader. I think from a moral point, INEC is trying to satisfy that. But the point I made earlier, what I am worried about is INEC's inconsistency, and that is why the PDP will be crying foul.
But don't you think they are addressing some of these issues because of the circumstances around the incidents?
Well, whatever applies for Adama, I think should also apply to other states. If you look at also, if you are truly applying the margin of lead principle, if you go to states like Kaduna, the difference between the two candidates is 10,000 votes.
But what about wasted votes, because they put some of these things before arriving at, to say, okay, we have accredited so-so number. Let me give you an example. In Kebbi, right? He said we aggregated the total number of collected PVCs in those polling units, and it came to a total of 91,800 and blah, blah. And when we checked the results, the two leading political parties in the contest, APC and PDP, polled 388,258 and 342,980 votes respectively. When we look at the difference, it stands at 45,270.
I think we are all saying the same point.
Okay.
What I'm trying to explain here is when you're applying the margin of lead principle, by the time you have those two leading candidates, you want to check what is the margin between the two candidates. In Adama, it is 31,000. Now, you look at the locations where elections were not held or elections were cancelled for some concerns. For Adamawa, they got 77 locations before now. I think INEC is beginning to right those wrongs with the kind of outing we saw in the state elections that happened on March 18th. We hope the commission will build on those successes. We expect to see early commencement, but also improved communication. This is barely 2 weeks before the election. You expect by now that INEC is providing updates to Nigeria about what it is doing. As much as I know this are happening at the different states, there should also be a unifying voice from INEC to also know that, so that Nigerians can know at different level, this is what the commission is doing. On the day of the election, we expect the polls will start early. They are not happening across all the states. They are happening in just a few locations. That the commission will give everybody that come out to vote that chance to be able to be counted in the elections.
All right. Thank you very much, Paul Jones, Program Manager, Elections at Tiaga Africa, for coming to the program.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, viewers, unfortunately, we lost contact with Emmanuel Njoku caught because of technical glitch from his end. We have to have him some other time. And that's a wrap on today's edition. Do join us again for another interesting package. For now, bye-bye. I'm Hamza Idris.